Now, Kit touched on Mr. Richard Goodall's special performance. It's important to note just how much of an impact his impressive vocals have made around the world.
Just a small town girl. Living in a lonely world. What? She took the midnight train going anywhere.
Small town janitor, hidden in plain sight for over 20 years, suddenly steps onto one of the biggest stages in the world and leaves everyone speechless. How did a man cleaning school hallways end up receiving the golden buzzer? What personal tragedy drove him to his heart out in front of millions? Richard Goodall, the singing janitor in the quiet town of Terro, Indiana mornings, begin with the gentle sound of a broom sweeping across the floor, echoing through empty school hallways for over 2 decades. This routine has been the same for Richard Goodall, a janitor who has walked these corridors with the same steady pace and the same dedication to his work. But what most people didn't realize until recently was that this quiet, humble man had a voice that could captivate millions. Richard wasn't just a janitor, he was the singing janitor, though few knew how deep his love for music truly ran. His story isn't one of instant fame, but of a passion that slowly simmered beneath the surface for years. Just waiting for the right moment to shine, as a young boy, Richard found solace in music in the living room of his family's modest home. He'd sit in front of his Radio Shack stereo, listening intently to the tunes of the 70s and 80s rock bands of the era, transported him to another world. But it was Journey that truly captured his heart. Steve Perry's soaring voice became Richard's beacon, a guiding light that showed him the power of music to move people. But for Richard, music wasn't a path he would immediately pursue. He didn't have formal vocal training, nor did he dream of becoming a star after high school, while many of his classmates chased their ambitions in far-off cities. Richard chose a quieter, steadier route. He took a job as a janitor with the VGO County School Corporation, a position he would hold for over 20 years. Every morning, Richard would arrive at the school before the first bell rang, ensuring that the halls were spotless, the classrooms tidy, and the floors gleaming. He worked in the background, a figure familiar to the students and staff, yet often overlooked. But what they did was the fire that still burned inside him, the love for music that he kept alive in the quiet moments of his day. And it was within the walls of that very school where Richard's talent would begin to emerge, though in the most unexpected of ways. Each year, the school held talent shows and events, and Richard was always a fixture on these occasions, while many might have expected the janitor to simply sweep up after the festivities. Richard had something else in mind at the 5th grade graduation ceremony year after year. Richard would step onto the stage, microphone in hand, and sing his heart out. His voice, powerful and soulful, left both students and parents in awe. For many of the children, this performance became a highlight of their final days in elementary school. And for Richard, it was a small way to share his passion with the community he had come to love. Despite his incredible voice, Richard remained largely unknown outside the school. His performances were cherished by those who witnessed them, but he never sought the spotlight. He was content with his role and proud of the work he did every day. But deep down, there was still a dream that perhaps one day his voice might reach a wider audience. But how did Richard Goodall's childhood love for music, listening to old records, lead him to a moment of sudden fame? What happened that took him from cleaning floors to capturing the attention of millions? And how did one performance change his life overnight? Could this quiet man handle the fame he never looked for? As his voice spread around the world, a life-changing audition, that day came sooner than he ever expected. After years of encouraging whispers from students and faculty alike, Richard finally decided to take a leap of faith. He gathered his courage and auditioned for America's Got Talent, a decision that would change the course of his life forever. Stepping onto the stage, his heart pounded in his chest. The bright lights, the cameras, and the judges. All of it was a world away from the quiet school hallways he had known for so long. But once he began to sing, all those nerves melted away. Richard chose a song close to his heart, Journey's Don't Stop Believing. And as his voice filled the theater, the audience was stunned there in front of millions of viewers. The singing janitor finally had his moment as the music started. Richard's nerves melted away, His voice, rich and soulful, filled the room. The judges were visibly moved, and the audience watched in awe as he effortlessly hit every note. But what happened next was beyond anything Richard had ever imagined. When the last note faded, the audience erupted into applause, and then, to his shock, one of the judges reached for the golden buzzer. Confetti rained down as the sound of the buzzer filled the theater. Richard stood there, overwhelmed, tears welling up in his eyes. This was the moment he had waited for his entire life. The moment. He had waited for his entire life, the moment that would catapult him into the spotlight. It was the kind of moment that changed everything. A life-defining audition. Richard Goodall, the singing janitor from Tara, Hot stepped onto the stage of America's Got Talent and poured his heart out for the world to see. The lights were bright, the judges sat with critical eyes, and the audience waited in anticipation. But Richard wasn't focused on any of that. For him, this was his chance, the moment he had quietly dreamed about for decades. The Terre Haute community had always known Richard's kind heart and incredible voice. But now the world was getting a glimpse of what made him so special. Determined to support him on this incredible journey, his friends, neighbors, and local businesses came together in an extraordinary show of solidarity. Fundraisers were organized, donations poured in, and the entire town worked to ensure that Richard had everything he needed to make his dream of competing on AGT a reality. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the belief they had in him, the recognition of how much he had given to their community over the years. For Richard, this support meant everything. He had spent over 2 decades quietly working behind the scenes, ensuring that the schools in his community were well kept, all the while sharing his voice with those lucky enough to hear it. Now that same community was giving back, showing him that his talent and kindness had not gone unnoticed. But Richard's journey didn't stop there. His audition went viral, spreading across social media like wildfire. People from all corners of the globe were sharing clips of the singing janitor, marveling at how someone so unassuming could possess such an extraordinary talent. For Richard, it was overwhelming. He had never sought fame or fortune. He simply loved to sing. Yet here he was, with millions of fans cheering him on, many of them commenting on how his story was a reminder that it's never too late to chase your dreams. Richard's sudden rise to fame brought with it a whirlwind of attention. Interviews, television appearances, and even offers to perform at larger venues began pouring in. Through it all, Richard remained the same humble man he had always been. Despite the newfound recognition, he never forgot where he came from or the students who had believed in him from the start. In fact, one of the first things he did after his audition aired was to return to the school and sing for the children once again. This time, though, it was different. The kids looked at him not just as their janitor, but as a hometown hero, while many would have been tempted to leave their old life behind. After such an experience, Richard stayed grounded. He continued his work at the school, sweeping the halls and greeting the students with a smile each morning. Fame for Richard wasn't about leaving behind the life he had built. It was about showing others, especially the children he worked with, that anything is possible if you follow your passion. For over 2 decades, Richard quietly nurtured his love for music, sharing with those around him in small, meaningful ways. And when the moment came for him to share it with the world, he embraced it with grace and humility. Now, as he continues to balance his work as a janitor with his growing music career, Richard serves as an inspiration to millions. His journey is a testament to the power of persistence and the belief that sometimes the biggest stars are the ones who shine the brightest from the most unexpected places. But behind Richard Goodall's incredible voice lies a story of heartache. How did a personal tragedy, the loss of a loved one, inspire him to pour